Hey guys, I'm Kate. Welcome back to my channel, and today we are kicking off a new sort of series on this channel called the Trope Bracket Challenge. Woo! So after doing some research, talking to my writer friends, talking to my reader friends, talking to my gamer friends, I came up with the least favorite fantasy tropes. And now, to be fair, some people suggested some things that I actually really love, like boarding schools and like the wise old wizard, so I did not include them. These are all tropes that I also don't really like. There are 32 of them. And while there is going to be some overlap with like other genres, most of these are very specific to fantasy or done in a way unique to fantasy that annoys me. Yes. The other thing is that I'm not going to be the only one who's participating in this, right? Okay? I used a randomizer to come up with the initial head-to-head challenges, and so I'm going to answer this, but I'm going to fill out the entire bracket, and then as the days go on, I'm also going to see how my Instagram followers, mostly readers and writers, also feel about these tropes. We're going to see how much overlap there is. We're going to see if there's any very close ones, because some of these, I didn't look at any of the results yet, but I know for some of these, the head-to-heads are going to be kind of tough for me. So, without further ado, let's frickin' get started. So the first head-to-head battle is forced romance between two main characters versus evil for the sake of being evil. This one's hard. I'll say up front that I appreciate a romance in my stories. What I don't appreciate is when the two main characters have to get together. Like, let's not do that. We don't need to do that. That being said, I want a villain I can root for. I want a villain where it's like, in another world, in another life, I could almost see their point of view, like their perspective. So I'm gonna say the evil for the sake of being evil. I don't want to read a story about that. I don't want to play a game like that. Give me a reason, writers of the world. This next one is almost unfair because I have a true, genuine hatred for one of these that's about to come up. And actually it's been a hatred for like several years now. It was also one of the most suggested ones. So there's the lone wolf main character, you know, the guy who don't need nobody, gonna go off on his own inevitably, you know, he's gonna learn to love and trust others. Like that is his arc. We all know that's his arc. It's competitive. The Chosen One, I'm just done with. I don't want to read another Chosen One story. And this is one of those where it seems very unique to fantasy settings. I'm just tired. I'm just so tired. So the Chosen One is the worst of those two. It advances to the next round. Ding ding. Next up we have a character who is MIA for an entire book just to like build the tension. You know, the author has a huge audience of characters and they're like, you don't need to hear about this person for a while. Game of Thrones, I know, was notorious for this. Versus the damsel in distress. Look. While I don't enjoy the having to wait to find out about a character, like it actually kind of makes me anxious in some ways. It's occasionally a good anxious. I feel like Meg from Hercules said it best. I am a damsel, I'm in distress, I can handle this. And if your damsel in distress cannot handle this, I don't want to read your book, I don't want to play your game, I don't want to watch your movie. No. Now, this is the hardest one I've come up against so far. We have the hero with zero experience who suddenly, after one quick training montage, is a master, is the best, is superior than everyone else. I feel like this one often goes along with the Chosen One, but we're gonna separate them for the sake of this bracket. It sucks on its own though, honestly. Versus gratuitous sex scenes that don't further the plot at all. I think this is especially awful in fantasy video games where it's like something you have to play through. Theoretically in books you can just kind of like skip a couple pages, or in movies if it really bothers you, you can fast forward. But in games you gotta play through the arc. So I'm gonna say the hero with zero experience who suddenly becomes amazing after a brief interlude of hayas. That's just bad writing. Next up, we have the reluctant hero versus the evil witch slash sorceress who's the only woman with power. Look here. I knew when I made this bracket challenge that some were like not gonna stand a chance against others. This is one of those where it's just an unfair matchup because while the reluctant hero bothers me, it's still one of those that I think can be done well. I want you to give me a lot of good reasons about why they're reluctant and I'm gonna question you, but you're gonna tell me the only woman with powers in your world is the evil one? I refuse to accept this as an answer. No. This next one is a very good one. Bad riddles in fantasy stories. I'm actually reading one now that doesn't have a riddle, but it has a song. and that's like occasionally kind of close to the thing for me. A lot of these you can really see Tolkien's influence. But Bad Riddles is up against the I'll tell you when I see you next. Similarly, the book I'm reading also has used that already twice. It's still a good book, so this is where we're gonna get into a weird part, but like Game of Thrones did that all the freaking time. I'll tell you when I see you next is also one that's not unique to fantasy, but I found that the way fantasy does it, it tends to be a really big secret, which debatable if that's better, but it bothers me every time because you know that person's gonna die. That's what you, the author, just told me. That character's dead now. I'll tell you when I see you next. If that was in a middle grade fantasy book or something, you should just like put a tombstone on the chapter head. Now we have the overpowered object. The object that everyone is on the hunt for, that everyone wants, that inexplicably contains so much freaking power that it will be either the thing that like curses everyone to damnation or like the thing that can get the good guys to win. Harry Potter, you got the Elder Wand, you have the One Ring. Versus Eurocentric fantasy. I would love for the fantasy genre as a whole to be much more inclusive. I'd like a little bit more creativity. There's lots of other cultures and places and different kinds of fantasy. I think that is changing, which is really cool, and like you can choose what you pick up. Which one am I more annoyed by? Do 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 do. Video games aside, because video games, I appreciate the hunt for the object, you know, because oftentimes you have to get one object to get the other object to build the object that'll eventually win you the object that you need, the overpowered object. I actually still kind of like that in video games, but in movies, TV shows, books, I'm kind of tired of the overpowered object. And now I've just become pickier with the fantasy books that I pick up, and I'm making the effort not to read as much Eurocentric fantasy. I'm gonna go with the overpowered object is more annoying. This one's a tough one though. Especially, you know what, here's what I'll say again. Not done with it. I can tell from the back of the book if it's gonna be a European-centric fantasy, like if that's the world that I'm about to explore, I can tell really quickly. So I can avoid them more easily than like when I'm in a fantasy and then all of a sudden the object is like so important. Sometimes that's also in the back of the book, but not always. So yeah, I feel like I'm more duped by it. This next one, prophecies versus time travel. Let me tell you how much I dislike both of them. First off, time travel. There has never, ever been any show, any movie, any book that has properly explained time travel to me that was in a way that I could move beyond the logic of it. I would always get caught up. It never quite made sense. Freaking J.K. Rowling had to write herself out of that problem with the time turner issue, and J.K. Rowling, I don't even want to talk about that right now. Anyways, jeez. Even in Avengers Endgame, which is arguably in recent history the closest time travel thing that almost worked for me, I was still kind of like, But then prophecies frickin' suck, okay? I don't like either of these, and I'm mad that they're matched up because both of these could go really far. Prophecies, much like The Chosen One, annoy the crap out of me because it's like taking away the agency of our characters, and or they're always doing it in like a screwy way where it's like aha, I got you to the reader, and I don't like that. Just gonna sit here and pout until I figure it out. As much as the prophecies annoy me, and they do annoy me, I think it can be argued that they can be done well. I don't know that you can make that same argument for time travel. Please comment down below if you have a good time travel story. I want you to know I will be a huge skeptic, but I'd like to, but I don't want to put in the time, that'd be terrible. Nope, it's time travel. Time travel sucks. That's it. Next up, we have never-ending side quest versus Magic Ex Machina. What is this lighting? Hold on. Magic Ex Machina is the spin-off of Deus Ex Machina because it was so popular to do this in fantasy and it was so freaking annoying. We have put our characters into a terrible situation. However, will they get out of this? We have set up the world so that they cannot. Everything that we, the reader, knows and believes to be true means that they will not be able to get out of this situation easily. Not without some deaths, not without some consequences, and then bam! The magic comes in that we've had no hints at before in order to save them. You know what? And based off of the amount that I'm talking about, that's the answer. That's the answer. That's the worst one. That is what I like to think. The author was sitting there and had come up with this entire story, and they just had an oh shit moment where they realized they'd messed up. Not just like a little bit messed up. They so messed up that they cannot connect what they had done to what they need to get to, that they have to introduce a new rule in the magic. No. No, no, no. No, 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 no. Ding, ding. Now we have the hero that is always an orphan. Because of course, we don't need to deal with the pesky parents. This is true in both like young adult, especially because we need a reason why no one's like taking after this child, but also to make the protagonist in adult fantasy like hardened and they can't trust anyone. And it's because, you know, versus a life for a life. I'm tired of a life for a life magic, but I at least appreciate that that one's like a clear consequence. I wish we could be a little bit more creative, but like I feel that way times 1,000 on the hero being an orphan. We get it. We, the writers, somehow need to make this hero feel like they have nothing. And so that's the path that we've all chosen. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. Let's not do that one anymore. Says the girl who writes absentee parents in her fantasies, you know, where they're there, but like the child has to take after them instead. It's a very close cousin. That's how I know it's bad, because I'm also doing it. Next up, we have the world building info dump, always at the beginning of the novel, versus the impossible to pronounce names. Info dumps are what keep me from some particular fantasy books that have burned me from really good series, where I'm just like, I want nothing to do with it if I had to spend 100 pages, where it just feels like the author is like feeding their ego of the great world that they've created rather than like telling me the story. My trick for impossible to pronounce names, which I still like don't really like, but I give them nicknames in my brain. I did this on the SATs too, because my head does get hung up on names when I'm going over it and reading through, so I just give them nicknames instead, usually like the first 3 letters. If I didn't have that, this might be a little bit harder, but the info dump at the beginning needs to go. It needs to end. That's one of the reasons that I often love fantasy movies and video games a little bit more than, you know, really high fantasy novels, because I can visually see all of the world building, which is really cool, and like learn about it that way. Next, we have the evil Dark Lord is secretly related to our hero, because of course they are. I think this happens more in young adult novels. I'm thinking specifically about the Mortal Instruments series that, you know, I have feelings about. I would argue it's probably one of the reasons I ended up not really continuing that series. Why is it so incestuous? Like, why is one family the one with all the power? Why? Versus an entire race or species having one personality. That one has to win, right? This is where authors I've found in recent times have gotten into trouble too. It's lazy writing at like the nicest end of it. We've seen a couple racist instances where it's like, oh, what are you trying to say here? Why would you do this? No, no. And another instance of lazy writing, we have a magic system with no rules or confusing rules versus the hero had the magic in them all along. Because magic is so hard, like a lot of my writer friends have struggled over their magic system. I get it when I'm reading it. It is very annoying where you're like, but it doesn't make sense. But oftentimes if the story is good enough, I can get over it. The hero having the magic in them all along, like they just needed that little something to ignite in them, and like now they understand, now they can do it. It was a secret they had to unlock. I'm just tired of it. This isn't gonna be the tropes I hate the most, it's the tropes I'm the most tired of. Can you please stop? Yes, thank you. Hero had the magic MacGuffin in them all along, because then I always feel like, what was the point, you know? Now we have Here Comes the Cavalry versus made-up languages. While made-up names I can kind of do substitutions for, made-up languages is often hard. The difference here is I think there's like a line for this. You know, I do love all the people who have learned Klingon if we're going to intertwine our sci-fi and fantasy. The people who learned Dothraki, you know? I will however say that there's something really impressive, at least, in authors who do manage to write their own language. So at least that one has a plus side. The Here Comes the Cavalry. It feels very similar to the Deus Ex Machina thing, where it's like they're not gonna be able to escape. It's not gonna work. I think you can write it well sometimes. Like, I did appreciate, I'm gonna bring up Game of Thrones again, just because visually I loved Jon Snow being like trampled by his own people as they're all like getting crowded in, and then Sansa helps bring in the cavalry. Generally though, another tough one. Characters being resurrected versus the long lost heir or the secret heir. Dang it. I know which one's gonna win. Character resurrection. Character resurrection makes it to the next round, and the only reason, and you could argue the secret heir has a little bit of this too, but I don't like the emotions it toys with for the other characters who have like mourned the loss. We the readers have mourned the loss of this character, unless it's like a necromancy story, or I know that there's a necromancer character so I can expect there to be a resurrection. I don't even really like fake deaths, to be honest. What I'm saying is, if you die, can you just stay dead, please? Opening scene is Hunting to Survive. This is one where we were almost on the border of me being trash for it, since it's pitted up against one that I really hate, which is, you kill the big bad, all the minions die. I freaking hate where, and it annoys me so much. There's this, oh gosh, okay. This is how much it annoys me. You know, when they get him with the sword, and then I think it's again a cinematic or kind of like, oh, they're all down. But no, I want the minions to have to like, hold them accountable, unless they're not doing it of their own free will, which debatably is like another trope that's not great. Then I want them to be held accountable. I don't want it to be so easy that you can just target the one big bad and know that your problem's solved. If there's a war, I want you to have to convince like everyone. I like when not all of the problems are solved so neatly. I think that's the thing. I guess spoiler alerts for Mistborn kind of. Once we kill the big bad, we start to learn a lot more about the mists, and we also start to see like, you know, we're now new to power, we've now won, and yet there's a lot of people who don't necessarily want us on the throne. That's the kind of fantasy I like. I don't want it to be so simple. I don't want it to be so clean. If all the minions die, they can't be held accountable. So killing the big bad and all the minions dying moves on to the next round. Time to see the results. Forced romance wins. Chosen one wins, but only by a little bit. I am surprised. Damsel in distress, no one likes that. Hero with 0 experience. Evil witch sorceress. Ooh, I'll tell you when I see you next. Only you just barely bested bad riddles. Overpowered object. Time travel. Wow, magic ex machina just barely beat never-ending side quests. Hero is always an orphan. Whoa, is this the closest one yet? I think it is. World building infodump. Entire race species has the same personality. Magic system with no limits. Here comes the cavalry. Character resurrection. Kill bad guy equals all the minions die. And that was it. Yay! Then I transferred the Instagram results over to my spreadsheet and highlighted where I'd selected something different than the popular answer, although shockingly on this side of the bracket, that was only once. Now filling out the rest of this side of the bracket was actually pretty easy. The chosen one is somehow more annoying than being evil for the sake of being evil. I advanced hero with 0 experience who's somehow amazing after a quick training montage over the damsel in distress, I think purely just for how often it's used. That's much the same reason I'll tell you when I see you next beat out the evil witch sorceress as the only woman with power. Then time travel beat out the overpowered object because frickin' time travel. Then on to the next round, I shockingly decided that though my hatred for the chosen one ran strong, it was somehow not as bad as the hero with 0 experience. I had no hesitation. Hero with 0 experience moved on. And another shocker was that I'll tell you when I see you next felt worse to me in the moment than time travel. But that was the last of the easy decisions. In fact, I was so unsure of that final matchup and who would advance to the final round that I actually went to the other side of the bracket and filled that out instead. And then immediately struggled with the first choice. I picked, then deleted, before eventually deciding that the hero always being an orphan was worse than magic ex machina. Then the rest of that side was a little bit easier. The entire race species having the exact same personality was worse than world building info dumps. The hero having the magic MacGuffin in them all along was worse than the cavalry coming, and sudden character resurrections were more annoying to me than the big bad dying and then all of the minions are kaput. Even though I would still like them to be held accountable. The entire race species having the exact same personality beat out the hero always being an orphan, and in another shocker, I chose the hero having the magic MacGuffin in them all along as being worse than character resurrection. But once that matchup hit, the one to advance to the next round was the entire race species having the exact same personality. So then I needed to go back to the other side of the bracket and bring I'll tell you when I see you next to the final. Perhaps the most shocking to me is that though there were several differences between my answers and what Instagram thought, we ended up with the exact same worst fantasy trope. Should I do a drum roll? No, wait, I'll do the do-do-do's so that you can see what Instagram did. Yes. Do 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 do. Let's transition into a drum roll. Okay, the entire race slash species having the exact same personality is our winner for the worst fantasy trope. When it comes down to it, I guess this winner isn't that shocking. One, it is an example of lazy writing to have just one singular personality for an entire group of people and passing it off like that's okay. Not only is it lazy, but it also kind of simplifies down your world, and when you think about what people who read fantasy want, they like the complexity. It's much more interesting to get different perspectives from people from the same realms and how they're struggling and how they're internally fighting, which is much more reflective of our real world than to just dumb it down. I think this also tends to sort of transcend individual books, because if you ask a lot of people what like a personality for an elf might be, we all kind of immediately conjure up a perhaps stereotypical sort of colder, poised, whatever. I'm not saying all fantasy books have elves that are like that. I'm just saying I think it's indicative that we could all kind of be like, yeah, we know those elves, you know? So anyways, that's it for me. Please do comment down below. Let me know what your least favorite fantasy trope is. Let me know if I didn't have it on this bracket at all. Let me know if there's any choices that you really disagree with me on. And once again, let me know if you have any good time travel books that might be able to convince me that it can be done well. You know what? Let's not even go well. It can be done okay. That's all I'm asking. I am thinking about revisiting this concept and doing it for my least favorite romance tropes, maybe even my favorite romance tropes, and the same for YA, and perhaps coming back to the fantasy tropes that I am trash for. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you especially to some of my new patrons this month: Sean, Renee Antonia, John Philip Voss, Elizabeth Oshner, Winnell Marie, and Writer Kiera Collins, and I will see you all very soon with the new video. Bye! And then like things you gotta build up to like create the object that will like help you win the object. There's lots of objects here.